Diddy's lawyer, Anthony Rico, has just quit after Judge Ein Subin ruled that Diddy's case will go to trial. This is a major development in the ongoing legal battle, as the situation seems to be escalating. Documents that were obtained from Diddy's cell show that he's been attempting to contact witnesses involved in his case. This is certainly a...
He's doing fine. It's a difficult circumstance. He's making the best of the situation.
A situation one of Diddy's attorneys won't be part of moving forward. Anthony Rico announcing in court docs, under no circumstances can he continue defending the embattled rapper.
This is a serious proceeding with serious consequences, and all of us are addressing it accordingly.
In a motion filed on Thursday, Rico stopped short of revealing why he's stepping down from Diddy's legal team, just months ahead of the music mogul's scheduled trial date in May for sex trafficking and racketeering charges, all of which Diddy's denied.
You know, Dr. King called it the law of unintended consequences. So sometimes the more you push a person down, the stronger they get.
That's Rico speaking up late last year for his now former client. ET's learned the attorney's exit will not affect Diddy's other attorneys, nor their defense strategy.
I told Mr. Combs I'm going to try and get his case to trial as quickly as possible. He has been ready to defend this case since he first found out about this case. Nothing has changed from his perspective.
You're going to hear about my party. They're going to be shutting them down. They're going to probably be arresting me.
After Diddy was arrested, Rico said he provided a high level of legal representation. But now, for reasons unknown, he can under no circumstances effectively serve in the upcoming trial.
Nobody's okay with staying in jail for now.
And high-profile death penalty attorney Anthony Rico. Now, while the pair joined around the same time, Anthony in a court filing on Friday said he's leaving the case. In the filing, Anthony Rico said, quote, "For the reasons set forth below, this motion for withdrawals is filed so that Sean Combs may move forward with his defense and to commence jury selection and trial without any delay. As a result of discussion with lead counsel Mark Agnifilo, this motion for withdrawal of counsel is filed. While I am aware that the local rule requires that an application for withdrawal of counsel is supported and granted, there are sufficient reasons related to protections afforded by the attorney-client privilege for brevity in my application for withdrawal as counsel in this case. Although I have provided Sean Combs with the high level of legal representation expected by the court, under no circumstances can I continue to effectively serve as counsel for Sean Combs," end quote. Now, essentially in legalese, I quit, but I can't go into details because of attorney-client privilege. According to the filing, though, the defense shakeup won't delay the case. Diddy will continue with 5 attorneys. That's Mark Agnifilo, Tinny Garagos, Alexandra Shapiro, Jason A. Driscoll, and Anna Esteval. Now, a judge still has to sign off on the motion, but with the government taking no position on it and the fact Anthony Rico spoke with Mark Agnifilo about it before filing the motion, a judge will likely sign off.
Serious issue. And now, even his legal team is starting to fall apart, with Rico stepping down. The big question now is this the end for Diddy? Will he really end up behind bars for the rest of his life? Despite the gravity of the situation, Diddy is reportedly doing fine. It's clear that he's facing a difficult circumstance, but sources say he's making the best of it, staying strong in the face of these challenges. Still,
with all of that being said, kind of going back to what potentially the reasoning might be, do you think that it might have been a personal conflict between Diddy and Anthony Rico, or do you think it might have been Anthony Rico with other counsel? But what do you make of all of that?
Potentially, it could be a conflict with the client, right? A disagreement. They just don't get along. The communication is poor. They don't agree on defense strategy. It could be a conflict with one of the other lawyers. Obviously, it seems like Agnifilo is the lead on this case, although Rico was certainly his 1B. And I know obviously there's other lawyers on the case. Obviously, a lot of the victims are female. They're going to want female lawyers on the defense team, especially during some of the aggressive cross-examination. That tends to be the conventional wisdom when you're dealing with victims who are alleged victims of sexual assault or abuse. And then it could be a conflict with one of the victims themselves. Maybe maybe Rico consulted with them or even represented them in such a way that he has to get off the case. So it could be any number of potential conflicts.
This is a situation that's only getting more complicated. As of now, one of his key attorneys, Anthony Rico, won't be part of his defense team moving forward. In a significant legal development, Rico announced in court documents that, under no circumstances, can he continue defending the hip-hop mogul. Rico's decision to step down was formalized in a motion.
I think it has to be the defense, the consent, because, look, sometimes you can argue that the sexual activity never happened, right? It wasn't me, defense. But this is not your typical sexual assault case. There are a lot of people there, right? There are people that are arranging the sex workers. There are people that are setting up lights and cameras, booking hotel rooms. Obviously, Diddy has a large entourage. So there's a lot of witnesses there. And a lot of this was allegedly recorded. So I think it's going to be very difficult to argue that it wasn't me. So you're going to have to argue that it was consensual. And we've talked about the line that separates sex trafficking from consensual sex. It's that force, fraud, or coercion. So I fully expect the defense to be, this was all consensual. These are all people who are trying to shake Diddy down for money. This is all extortion. That's why they're pursuing these claims. They're just piling on. But really, this is regret, not rape. And I think that's the defense strategy in this case.
Sean Combs asked the judge in his federal case to throw out one of the charges. He says he's being targeted because he's a black man and the charge is rooted in racism. I look at Combs' argument and his chances of success. Welcome to Crime Fix. I'm Anjanette Levy. Sean Diddy Combs wants one of the counts in his federal superseding indictment thrown out. Combs argues he's basically being singled out by federal prosecutors because of his race and his success in business.
Diddy's defense seems to be gearing up toward his alleged criminal conduct wasn't criminal. It was his personal business of what was going on in his bedrooms or hotels or wherever the freak-offs occurred. So they're saying that count 3 wasn't transportation to engage in prostitution, but was just him using escorts, male escorts at that, to bring in as a third with his girlfriends. Whereas the government's theory of the case is Diddy used force, fraud, and coercion to make his alleged victims have sex against their will in his freak-offs that he recorded for his own pleasure. Now, Diddy pleaded not guilty to all his charges, hence why the case is going to trial.
Motion filed in court on Thursday. In his motion, Rico didn't elaborate on the specific reasons behind his decision to withdraw from Diddy's legal team. However, he made it clear that he felt this was the only course of action, especially given the seriousness of a case. He mentioned that this is a serious legal proceeding with serious consequences, and that everyone involved, whether it's the legal team or Diddy himself, is treating it with the utmost seriousness. But what's perhaps most alarming about this development is that Rico is stepping down just months ahead.
But basically the idea was that this was a pretext to search Sean Combs' unit. But the idea here is there was a raid to search for contraband. This is a detention center that has been plagued with violence and drugs and weapons. Okay, so this raid, this sweep, it happens. And this investigator, Investigator 1, apparently took photos of 19 pages of Sean Combs' notes and sent them to a filter team. Now, a filter team is supposed to be an independent, third-party team not connected to the prosecutors that are involved in Combs' actual criminal case. They go through the documents and they make sure there's not anything in there that's attorney-client or work product privileged, okay? So the order continues from Judge Subramanian. In November, the government included some of what it received from the filter team in its opposition to Combs' bail application, and Combs objected, arguing that those notes contained privileged information and were obtained in violation of Combs' constitutional rights. The court held an emergency hearing at which the government indicated that it would not rely on the notes in opposing the bail application. The court ordered the case team to get rid of the notes in its possession, which it did. Combs should be denied bail. Why? Because they seem to indicate that those notes suggest Combs was improperly contacting and paying off a witness in the case. Yeah, they say this will show it. But yes, Judge Subramanian, in the end, ordered that those 19 pages be destroyed and that the government did not and could not use those notes in their argument for bail. But for Sean Combs, it didn't matter. He was denied bail.
Diddy's scheduled trial date, which is set for May. The case is about sex trafficking and racketeering charges, all of which Diddy has vehemently denied.
So according to the government, a person referred to as Investigator 1 had apparently been monitoring Sean Combs' phone calls and other communications. That's one of the ways that officials learned that Combs was allegedly breaking the jail rules by reportedly doing things like using other inmates' ID numbers or initiating three-way phone calls to potentially contact somebody he wasn't supposed to. But the defense has raised alarm bells when they say that this investigator improperly took photos of privileged notes in Combs' cell and then gave that information to the prosecution, despite the fact that the defense claims the word legal was written on the notepads, meaning there's attorney-client privilege issues.
This raises even more questions about Diddy's future. With Rico's resignation, the music mogul now faces an uphill battle in securing a legal defense that can navigate the serious charges against him. The clock is ticking, and with the trial looming just months away, Diddy and his team are left with much to figure out. It's a tense moment, and the public is watching closely.
Basically means that the previous charges have been updated and the government have added new details to the case. They've expanded either the charges against someone, which isn't what's happened here, or they have added new detail about the alleged crimes, which is what is happening in this particular case.
So what's new, what's different in this superseding indictment?
There are no new charges against Diddy. Like you said, he's still accused of sex trafficking, of racketeering and transportation for the purposes of prostitution. But what the prosecutors have done is expanded the case with more details. They've added 2 new female victims, and they've also said that the alleged crimes took place over a longer time frame than they'd initially said. It now runs from 2004 to 2024, whereas before it had just been a 16-year time span.
And you mentioned there about adding new victims. That's victim 2 and victim 3 referred to in this indictment, but we already had a victim. We had victim 1. They're still in it?
Yes, that's right. So victim 1 is the case that they built the federal prosecution on.
And they say about these 3 victims, Combs and other members and associates of the Combs enterprise wielded the power of the Combs global enterprise to intimidate, threaten and lure female victims into Combs' orbit, often under the pretense of a romantic relationship. Combs then used force, threats of force and coercion to cause victims, including but not limited to 3 female victims, 1, 2 and 3, to engage in commercial sex acts. In connection with the commercial sex acts, Combs provided the victims with, among other things, monetary payments, career opportunities and payments of rent and housing expenses.
To see what will happen next. For Diddy, the stakes couldn't be higher. If convicted, these charges could mean years, even a lifetime, behind bars. The allegations of sex trafficking and racketeering carry enormous weight, and the fact that even his legal team is starting to crumble only adds to the uncertainty surrounding the case. The question on everyone's mind is, can Diddy recover from this, or is this the beginning of the end for his career and freedom? As the days leading up to
a former assistant to Sean Diddy Combs speaking out in a new interview with new allegations about wild parties and drug use. Eva Pilgrim is here with the story. Good morning, Eva.
Good morning, Michael. At this point, we've all probably heard about these infamous parties. Diddy's assistant now giving us details about what he says were called Wild King Nights.
This morning, new details allegedly inside Diddy's world before his shocking arrest. The entertainment mogul now behind bars for federal sex trafficking and racketeering charges.
It was a circus. He did whatever he wanted, and we were just at his disposal.
Phil Pines was Diddy's senior executive assistant from 2019 to 2021. He says his then boss asked him to purchase supplies for parties dubbed Wild King Nights.
We usually had a laundry list of items that included lights, alcohol, marijuana, those requests started to become more frequent.
Pines claims many of these parties involved younger women.
A lot of times you would have him with a younger female. And there's a power dynamic there. A more impressionable girl is easier to reel in. Consent is between the people that are engaging, and I wasn't there in these situations to understand the consent.
Yes. One of the things is, the thing that stuck out to me, you mentioned it before, these allegations are so consistent with what the allegations are that are laid out by prosecutors when they describe the freak-offs in their indictment, right? These sex-fueled parties, these drug-fueled parties, the baby oil, the Astroglide, and it makes me wonder, A, do you think Mr. Pines is a cooperating witness for the government? B, if so, do you think he was one of the people that they originally spoke to when they were coming up with this, when they were drafting the indictment and coming up with the charges? Or do you think he's come out after? Because again, I think the timing of the lawsuit's important too, at the end of the year, right now. Talk to me about what you think his role might be.
If I had to guess, I would figure that the feds already talked to him, just because I know from my experience dealing with them how all-encompassing their investigations are. And if he really was his executive assistant from the time frame that they allege in the lawsuit, I can't see a scenario where they wouldn't. I mean, they investigate regular cases to the point that that I'm shocked when I see it as a criminal defense attorney with regular people. When you're talking about a high-profile celebrity case like this, I can't fathom that no one spoke to this individual prior to this. So I would think that they did speak to him, and I can't imagine that he's not a witness, because the way that they work is they want everybody that can corroborate their theory of the case to be on their witness list, or to be somebody that they could call. And I can't think that if he actually was his assistant for this time frame, he would be an excellent witness.
Sean Diddy Combs sues NBC for $100 million over its Peacock documentary about him. According to docs obtained by E! News February 12th, the Bad Boy Records founder filed a lawsuit against NBC Universal seeking $100 million after Peacock, the streaming service owned by the media company, released the documentary Diddy, The Making of a Bad Boy. In the filing, Combs, who is currently in jail on sex trafficking and racketeering charges, accuses NBC Universal of defamation and alleged that the company maliciously and recklessly broadcast the documentary, which included claims that the rapper committed crimes like serial murder and sexual assault of minors without having a shred of evidence. The filing reads, in making and broadcasting these falsehoods, among others, defendants seek only to capitalize on the public's appetite for scandal without any regard for the truth and at the expense of Mr. Combs' right to a fair trial.
New at 5, the legal troubles continue for Sean Diddy Combs tonight after a judge ordered the music mogul to pay $100 million to a Michigan man who says that he was sexually assaulted by Combs in '97.
According to court documents, Derek Cardello Smith says Combs drugged and then assaulted him during an after party at a Holiday Inn in Detroit. But Combs never responded to the lawsuit in court. On Monday, the judge ordered him to pay $10 million each month starting in October. The victim is currently behind bars serving a 75-year prison sentence for criminal sexual conduct and kidnapping.